Gopijana Vallabha Girivanadhari Jana Vallabha Girivanadhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivanadhari Jana Vallabha Girivanadhari Yasodanandana Rajagana Ranjana Jana Rajagana Ranjana Yasodanandana Rajagana Ranjana Rajagana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadhari Jana Vallabha Girivanadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadhari Jana Vallabha Girivanadhari Yasodanandana Rajagana Ranjana Nanda Rajagana Ranjana Yasodanandana Rajagana Ranjana Jana Rajagana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Bhagavacharya Satarya Satashishimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Gauda Vaishnavinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gauda Bhaktivinoda Ki ISKCON Founder Srila Prabhupada Ki Shishi Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki Mayapur Dham Ki Navadvip Dham Ki Jamuna Mahi Ki Ganga Mahi Ki Tulsi Devi Ki Bhakta Devi Ki Shishi Radha Kalokananda Ki Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevayam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevayam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 46, Text 35. Hatva Kansam Ranga Madhye Hatva Kamsa Ranga Madhye Pratipam Sarva Sattvatam Pratipam Sarva Sattvatam Yad Va Samagaya Yadaha Va Samagaya Krishna Satyam Karoti Tat Krishna Satyam Karoti Tat Advakam Samrangad Manje Pratipam Sarva Sattvatam Yadava Samagatya Krishna Satyam Karoti Tat Advakam Samranga Madhye Pratipam Sarva Sattvatam Yadahava Sagas Yadahava Samagatya Krishna Satyam Karoti Tat Advakam Samranga Madhye Pratipam Sarva Sattvatam Yadahava Samagatya Krishna Satyam Karoti Tat. All right. Advakam Samranga Madhye Pratipam Sarva Sattvatam Advakam Samranga Madhye Pratipam Sarva Sattvatam Yarayava Samagatam Krishna Satyam Karoti Tat. One of y'all want to try it? Yeah. It's practice. Okay. Hatva. Hatva. Having killed Kansam, Kamsa, Ranga, the arena, Madhye, within, Pratipam, the enemy, Sarvasatvatam, of all the adus, Yat, what? Aha, he spoke, Va, to you, Samagatya. By coming back, Krishna, Krishna, Satyam, true, Karoti, will make, Tat, that. Translation. Having killed Kamsa, the enemy of all the Yadus in the wrestling arena, Krishna will now surely fulfill his promise to you by coming back. So let's repeat, please. Having killed Kamsa, the enemy of all the Yadus in the wrestling arena, Krishna will now surely fulfill his promise to you by coming back. Okay, so we're going to read the short commentaries by the previous acharyas, starting with Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and they're pretty much all the same, short one. But it's kind of interesting because how they just used a little bit different words to describe the same thing. After killing Kamsa and coming to meet you at the edge of Mathura, Krishna said, "You return to Vraja, and we will also quickly come there." 10:45:23. Krishna is certainly doing that. The present tense is used, karoti, to indicate that Krishna is fulfilling his promise at his moment. In fact, in another manifestation, Krishna was actually in Vraja then, and he was being attentively cared for by Nanda and Yasoda, though Uddhava could not see this. Thus, the words from Uddhava were actually true. So, Jiva Goswami, we cannot believe he will return. This verse answers, having killed Kamsa, he will fulfill his promise, or he established through this verse the cause of Krishna's delay and his obligation to Vasudeva as his father. Present tense is used, karoti, to show that he will fulfill his promise in the very near future. Or having killed Kamsa, he remains with us making that vow that he spoke to you. Amara Kosha says that Satyam can mean an oath. And then Sanatana Goswami, we cannot believe he will return, making them remember that Krishna's words are truthful and infallible. He explains further, showing his prowess to give joy to his devotees by killing Kamsa, he will make true what he said. There is never anything untrue in his words. And so I'm going to read commentary of one more, Baladev Vidyabhushan, because now I have his commentaries. They've been on a boat since COVID. They've been lost in transition, I guess. So I got quite a number of books came into, and this his set of commentaries on the Bhagavatam, or one of them, very short. He just, like the others, he just gave a commentary on the 10th canto, and he gave a commentary on the 1st canto. That was his four volumes. So he's very short commentary. He said, what he promised to you, verse Srimad Bhagavatam, in chapter 45, text 33, he will fulfill. Present tense karoti is used now to show that he is most trustworthy and that he speaks the truth. So this kroti is, they all kind of zoned in on that one particular word. And basically that it's an oath that Krishna is trustworthy. So Omaganda Timarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Om Yutam Nena Tajmai Shri or Gurave Namaha. So that verse in 45:23 that they refer to is when he's talking to his father. He says, now you should all return to Vraja, dear father. We shall come to see you, our dear relatives who suffer in separation from us, as soon as we have given some happiness to your well-wishing friends. So at this point he makes a promise. So we have in this chapter Nanda's reminiscent about Krishna's pastimes with Uddhava. And Mother Yasoda's crying, and they're doing this because they actually met Krishna. They had a relationship with Krishna. We're trying to develop this mood without having met Krishna. We're developing that understanding and that relationship through knowledge of Krishna. By reading the books, hearing from the sadhus. We hear about Krishna's glories, his pastimes, his heroic activities. So, and also we hear about his interaction with his devotees. And by hearing these things, we become attracted. Similarly, people become attracted to heroic activities and just everyday life when they rise up. So these are some of the biggest, what they call on social media, these videos or that hit 1 million hits. They go viral because people, there are all kinds of crap that goes viral, but heroic activities is one of those that people tend to, and of course it also makes the news. And to hear about these activities, of course, there's a whole genre. The movies are just all superheroes, all everything about. That's one of the stories that seems to be pretty popular. These heroic activities, but the most supreme hero is Krishna, and there's always opportunities by Yogamaya and for Krishna to come to the rescue of his devotees, his dear devotees, and these stories are told throughout the Krishna book in the 10th canto. And we're going to hear these. They happened in Vraja, and now as we're transitioning, they're happening in Mathura. And so one of the stories referred to is how he killed Kamsa. And that whole, not just Kamsa, he killed this huge elephant, and then he killed the wrestlers, so it's just like gets better and better and better in this pastime. So this is by hearing these activities and the different expansions of Krishna and his activities, it develops our faith. And that's what changes over a period of time as we practice our sadhaka. It's knowledge and jnana is a big part of that, because without it, our faith is going to remain stagnant. The more we understand, it's more than just sentimentalism. So that's an important part. At one point, as we practice and we move on from this regulated activity, this external, what we're seeing, everything here is external activity. The deity worship supports that process. But this is all part of the external, in the organized religion. But once we develop this sentiment through this process of practice, then our attachment for Krishna will grow. And then at one of the stages of mature faith is that there is this point where we have some separation, this feeling of separation, without having met Krishna. Oftentimes what happens in the mature stage, there's a spruti, and you've heard this term come up often. A spruti is a vision that Krishna, at some point, he reveals himself. And oftentimes it's not very long, but it's enough to like, oh my God, I had him, but I lost him. Right? So this is what Lord Chaitanya said after he took initiation. He was in Goya. He got initiated. He's traveling back. This is a big turning point in his life. Of course, he's the Supreme Lord, but he's here to act and have a relationship as a devotee. He wants to have that type of relationship. So he comes back, he's traveling through a particular village, and then this young boy Krishna comes up to him, and he hugs him, and he disappears. So he sees Krishna, and that right there starts his separation, enhanced separation. Before that, it's knowledge. But Krishna is always fully satisfied. We're trying to have this relationship with him. We're trying to develop it. But he's fully satisfied, Krishna. He's always in Vrindavan. He never leaves Vrindavan. He expands But he's got his hands full with the gopis. He's got his hands full with Radharani. He's got his hands full with his cowherd friends, his mother and father. He's got so much going on. So we're trying to fit in there. Right now we're trying to add Krishna to our life. A little bit here, a little bit there. And the more we progress, the more we start adding Krishna into our day. We become more Krishna conscious. This is the process that as we develop. The more we develop, the more we think about Krishna, because the more we create a lifestyle that enhances, that we are thinking about Krishna often. The morning program, chanting our rounds, setting aside time to read, and there's so many activities, setting other activities to do service. So as we develop, we are more and more trying to make Krishna a part of our life. But then how do we fit in at one point? We want to be a part of Krishna's life, right? Instead of making him be a part of our life. So there's a transition. And so with all this going on in Krishna's life, how he's still happy to see when people come to Vrindavan. Hare Krishna. This is the story of the part 2 of the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. When Gopakumar finally gets to Krishna Loka and see Krishna, he's traveled the universe. He's traveled to Vaikuntha. He's coming back and forth to Vrindavan here on earthly Vrindavan. But he finally gets to Vrindavan in the spiritual world, Krishna's eternal, original abode. And Krishna's coming home in the evening with the cowherds' boys and the cows. Of course, they see this. I'm jumping ahead with the story, but of course, everybody's anticipating this at the end of the day. And they see that in the distance, they see the dust cloud because it's kicked up by the cows. We heard that story here about in the beginning how Uddhava's arriving. They can't see Uddhava too much because of the dust clouds from the cows coming home in the evening. So in a sense, he was hidden to a certain degree. So, but they're out on the roads, looking down the path where Krishna's going to come home. It's the end of the evening to greet him. And this particular time, Gopakumar was there. And this happens often with sadhakas who are successful in their practice. They get to that road where Krishna's coming home. And so Krishna's coming home. Gopakumar sees him. He faints out of ecstasy. He can't believe he made it. After so much he's gone through and so much practice, so much austerity. And then Krishna sees him. And Krishna's happy. Krishna starts crying because now here's this devotee. This enhances Krishna's pleasure. This is another way that Krishna is satisfied, self-satisfied. When he sees that the sadhaka achieves perfection, and that the sadhaka has worked so hard to come and see him, that he's so full of love that he cries. And they actually hug each other. Actually, Krishna faints. And everybody's freaking out. And they see this new person there. They think maybe, what has he done to Krishna? Because they're always looking at Krishna's best interest. But you're distracting me, I'm sorry. So Krishna's faints. They're trying to figure out, why is Krishna fainting like this? So Krishna gets up, Gopakumar's up, Balaram's there helping. He sees Gopa, and he kisses Gopa. He hugs him, and he gives him kisses. And then he takes him home to him. So this is we see an example of perfection, that Krishna is self-satisfied. But his satisfaction also comes in his relationship that he has with his devotees. So, Uddhava is a disciple of Brihaspati. He's not just a sentimentalist. He's a very learned, educated person. Brihaspati is also the spiritual master of the demigods. And so Uddhava's talking to them, and he's relieving their, trying to relieve their distress, that Krishna will fulfill his promise. And it's like Baladev Vijayabhushan talks about how, Kroti, that Krishna is trustworthy. And this is something that we have to develop. To get to that level, to get to Krishna Loka, we have to establish that we are trustworthy. That when this prema is given to us, that we're not going to abuse it. And that's typical in most relationships. When people enter into a relationship with somebody, there's this idea that there's going to be a level of trust in the relationship. There's going to be some kind of commitments in these relationships. And the relationships are going to be monogamous. But right now we're so engrossed in material life that our trust is not there because we're so dragged away from different things in our mind. So many different activities. Our senses are being dragged away because we don't have them totally under control. And so in Kali Yuga, that's practically impossible to control. They're almost difficult to control at any time, but in Kali Yuga especially. But Krishna is so merciful that in his name alone, if we just chant his name, we'll find love. We can experience love. He can bestow his love through his name because his name is non-different than himself. So he's telling them he's going to fulfill his promise. He says that he starts having some philosophical discussion with them. And he starts telling them, Krishna has no parents, and we'll see this in the next 2 or 3 verses. He'll start relaying these philosophical reasons why, to try to help relieve them. I don't know how well that's going to go over with them. We knew it didn't go over well when Akura came and tried that philosophy with the gopis. He tried to tell them that Vasudeva and Devaki were Krishna's real parents, and that he has to go there in prison. And this didn't do nothing but make the gopis mad. They just got even madder. They were in distress because Akura's taken Krishna away, and then Akura starts using some type of rational and reasoning that Krishna has to go protect his parents. But they just called Akura a liar. This is not true. Yasoda is Krishna's mother. Nanda is Krishna's father. So this just made them even more unhappy. So Uddhava is also using a strategy. So we see that their sentiment is there, but there also has to be philosophy. So Prabhupada said that religion without philosophy is just sentiment. And philosophy without religion is mental speculation. So there's this, you have to have both. Now, Vaishnavas oftentimes are criticized for being sentimentalists because those who look at Vaishnavas and they see them dancing and chanting in ecstasy, they see this as maybe not such especially in India, where you have yogis and Mayavadis who are very strict, and they just have this, they look at it, the activities of sentiment, especially when they see some, rarely, but because this is mostly done in private, and in ecstasies, a devotee would be rolling on the ground, he'll be crying, these types of ecstasies that advanced devotees will experience. There's also a story, it's actually related twice in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Lord Chaitanya was making an attempt to go to Vrindavan. When he's going to Vrindavan, he went to Varanasi. And in Varanasi, there's Chandrasekhar and Tapanam Mishra as 2 of his devotees. Tapanam Mishra is very interesting because when Lord Chaitanya, before he took sannyas, he had his students. He was a teacher of grammar. And so one day he takes all of his students, a few hours, they go to the Padma River. And there, Tapanam Mishra is relatively close by. And he's, of course, he's an eternal associate of the Lord, and the Lord is gathering his associates together. And he's also very distraught, but he has a dream because he's feeling like he doesn't know what to do with his life. He doesn't think he's going anywhere with his life. What's going to happen to him? And oftentimes people have this type of mentality. What am I going? Where have I come from? So he had a dream. And in that dream, they said there's a pandit very close by, Nimai. You should go see him. He's none other than the Supreme Lord. And you go see him, and then all your desires will be fulfilled. So he goes and sees Nimai. And this is really one of the first times I think that's documented where even before Lord Chaitanya starts the Sankirtan movement, he tells somebody to chant Hare Krishna. Of course, like most people, Tapanar Krishna doesn't want to give up his association. He wants to stay with him. But he said, no, I want you to go to Varanasi. At one point, I'll be there. So this is a number of years later after that incident. Tapanar Mishri is there. He's not only a great devotee, but one of his sons, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, is one of the 6 Goswamis, one of the preeminent Goswamis that we listen to. So Chandrasekhar's there, and another person who comes there is Sanatana Goswami. We read his commentaries here in the Srimad Bhagavatam. He's escaped from prison. He goes there. He's there for 2 months, and Lord Chaitanya's talking to him, educating him, and that we'll read those chapters from like 19 to 23 of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami's conversations. One of the things that came out of this are a lot of the literatures they wrote, books. One of the series of books is Hari Bhakti Vilas, which explains how a devotee should act, so the rules and regulations that would help one improve their devotional life. But there's so many rules and regulations, and Prabhupada said a lot of this is mostly for people in India. That those in the West, it's difficult enough to follow some of the basic rules than to have all this, pushed upon us. And the best explanation I have heard of this was that it's like a pharmacy where the spiritual master can disperse different things to the different disciples. Of course, if you have it as if you're a physician, that's like the guru is sometimes described as a physician because he can cure the material disease. You have to know the disciple, and you have to know this will help them or this might not help them. So there has to be some kind of relationship for this to work even better. So Sanatana Goswami is receiving information and knowledge from Lord Chaitanya. But at the same time, Varanasi is full of these Mayavadis, and they just see that devotees are sentimentalists. And so one day a Brahmin shows up, and he invites Lord Chaitanya to his house. Now, Tapanar Rishi and Chandrasekhar are saying, we hear that these Mayavadis, just call you a sentiment, that you're just sentimental, and this breaks our heart. But because for some reason they're not able to defeat these Mayavadis, and it's described that for a Vaishnava he shouldn't even associate, because there are spiritualists. There are 4 types of people. Prabhupada explains. There's Jnanis, yogis, devotees, and karmis. Of these 4, 3 of them are spiritualists: the yogis, Jnanis, and devotees. Karmis are materialists. They're in the material world, eternally conditioned. So, but they're very intelligent. But what they do, they take Vedanta sutras and they spin them a different way. We see people do this often in everything in life. They spin it to how it can support their philosophical understanding of merging into the Supreme Lord. So this Brahmin comes and invites Lord Chaitanya to come to his house for lunch. But he's also invited all these Mayavadis to come. So the Lord goes there. He accepts the invitation. And he goes, and when he goes there, he sees all these other sannyasis, and the first thing he does, he offers his obeisances to these sannyasis. And then he goes to the place where you wash your feet, because typically in India, people walk barefoot, and so you wash your feet before you enter. But what he does, he sits down there immediately after he washes his feet in that dirty place. And then the Supreme Lord is also known as Yogeshvara, that he's he controls all mysticism. He's it's part of his opulence. And so he exhibits some effulgence. It's described as like as bright as millions of suns. Now, obviously, this has a big impact on all these Mayavadis sitting there. They're seeing this. And so Prakrisananda Saraswati, the leader of these sannyasis, goes down and extends his hand and brings Lord Chaitanya up in the midst of the devotees. This is a very good lesson. This lesson is also taught by Jesus Christ to his disciples. He said, when you go out and you preach, and you travel and preach, and you go to some place, if there's a program, never go and sit in a prominent position. Always sit in some low position. And then if you're asked to come up and speak, this enhances your platform. That'll help in your preaching efforts. So never take, this is also helps in humility, because Jesus Christ was also a big component of practicing humility as a way to make spiritual advancement. So they bring him up there, and he sits down with them, and like one of the first things they ask him, he asks, why are you hanging out with all these, you're a sannyasi. Why are you hanging out with all these fanatics, these sentimentalists? Why aren't you studying Vedanta Sutra? So this section was Chaitanya Charitamrita is interesting because Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya explains, first off, that I'm just a fool. I don't know anything. My spiritual master told me just to chant Hare Krishna. This is the Supreme Lord giving this explanation. And also he's still exhibiting his humility in front of all these Mayavadis. And they're all becoming endearing to him, because not only is he very attractive, not only is he's created this effulgence that kind of diminished their effulgence as a group, but he's also becoming even more humble in his act. He said, my spiritual master told me one verse that I should always remember, that Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalam kalau nasta eva gatir anyata. So he stresses this 3 times, that there's no other way, there's no other way but chanting the holy name of the Lord in this age of Kali Yuga. But he said, if you want to talk Vedanta philosophy, I can speak something, maybe a little bit about Vedanta philosophy. So Prabhupada really gets into explaining why it's important for devotees to understand philosophy, to read these books, to have a grounding in a philosophical discussion, so that it's easier to, if you're going to be a preacher, you have to understand philosophy. There's different classes of people out there. Most, almost entirely, are going to be affected by Harinam Sankirtan. That's the number one effective tool, because most people aren't going to take the philosophy. Of course, book distribution is followed by that, and then you get books in people's hands, and you hope that all the numbers of books that are distributed, that a certain group of them will open up the book and read them, and they will be impacted even further, and they'll learn to inquire. So I'm going to read Prabhupada's purport. We have time of that in that section where he talks about this. This is in chapter 7, Adi 102. So the Mayavad sannyasis, appreciating Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, inquired from him why he did not discuss Vedanta philosophy. Actually, however, the entire system of Vaishnava activities is based on Vedanta philosophy. Vaishnavas do not neglect Vedanta, but they do not care to understand Vedanta on the basis of Saraka Bhashya commentary. Therefore, to clarify the situation, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, with the permission of Mayavadi sannyasis, wanted to speak regarding Vedanta philosophy. The Vaishnavas are by far the greatest philosophers in the world, and the greatest among them is Srila Jiva Goswami, whose philosophy was again presented less than 400 years later by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. So we read Jiva Goswami's commentaries almost every day, most days, in Srimad Bhagavatam class. Therefore, one must know very well that Vaishnava philosophers are not sentimentalists or cheap devotees like Sahajias. All the Vaishnava acharyas were vastly learned scholars who understood Vedanta philosophy fully. For unless one knows Vedanta philosophy, he cannot be an acharya. To be accepted as an acharya among Indian transcendentalists who follow the Vedic principles, one must become a vastly learned scholar in Vedanta philosophy, either by studying it or hearing it. Bhakti develops in pursuance of Vedanta philosophy. That is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.12. The words Bhaktya Sruta Grihitaya in this verse are very important, for they indicate that bhakti must be based on the philosophy of the Upanishads and the Vedanta Sutra. Srila Rupa Goswami says, devotional service performed without reference to Vedas, Puranas, Pancharatas, etc., must be considered sentimentalism, and it causes nothing but a disturbance in society. There are different grades of Vaishnavas: Kanishta Adhikari, Madhyama Adhikari, and Uttama Adhikari. There's 3 different levels of devotion. This is in the 11th canto. These are broken down, who they are. But to be a Madhyama Adhikari, middle, intermediate preacher, one must be a learned scholar in the Vedanta Sutra and other Vedic literatures. Because when Bhakti Yoga develops in the basic Vedanta philosophy, it is factually and steady. In this connection, we may quote the translation and purport in the verse mentioned above. So, Kanishta is the beginner. Madhyama means intermediate, and these are just Sanskrit words that are used to apply to intermediate, and then you've got Uttama, which is advanced. So, Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.12. Now, Prabhupada puts this translation and the entire purport of that commentary in his commentary in Chaitanya Charitamrita. He copied and pasted and put the same thing in his purport. That's how important he felt it was. So translation: the seriously inquisitive student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes that absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from Vedanta Sutra. So Prabhupada's purport. We'll get as much as we can. The absolute truth is realized in full by the process of devotional service to the Lord, Vasudeva, or the personality of Godhead, who is the full-fledged absolute truth, Brahman, and his transcendental bodily effulgence, and Paramatma is his partial representation. As such, Brahman or Paramatma realization of the absolute truth is but a partial realization. There are 4 different types of human beings: the karmis, the jnanis, the yogis, and the devotees. The karmis are materialistic, whereas the other 3 are transcendental. The first class transcendentalists are the devotees who have realized the Supreme Person. The second class transcendentalists are those who have partially realized the plenary portion of the Absolute Person. The third class transcendentalists are those who have barely realized the spiritual focus of the Absolute Person. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literatures, the Supreme Person is realized by devotional service, which is backed by full knowledge and detachment from material association. We have already discussed the point that devotional service is followed by knowledge and detachment from material association, as Brahman and Paramatma realizations are imperfect realizations of the absolute truth. So the means of realizing Brahman and Paramatma, the paths of jnana and yoga, are also imperfect means of realizing the absolute truth. Devotional service, which is based on the foreground of full knowledge combined with detachment from material association, which is fixed by dint of the oral reception of the Vedanta Sutra, is the only perfect method by which the seriously inquisitive student can realize the absolute truth. Devotional service is not therefore meant for less intelligent class of transcendentalists. Again, to reiterate, this knowledge comes from reading these books, Prabhupada's books, and hearing classes and people discuss these activities. We're not going to be able to read. Well, maybe we get to it. There are 3 classes of devotees, namely the first, second, and third class devotees, or neophytes, who have no knowledge, are not detached from material association. but are simply attracted by the preliminary process of worshiping the deity in the temple. They are called material devotees. Material devotees are more attached to material benefit than transcendental profit. This is the intermediate, kanista, beginning. We're all been there. A lot of us are still in that. The second class devotional position. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Probably a little boring. Some.
Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Kanvanta Maravindanalaya Taksham Varhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandar Akom Vidamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasa Sakalen Priti manti Pasyanti panti kayanti Chiram jaganti Ananda chinmaya sadhu Jala vigrahasya Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami 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 Govindam Adipurusham
Amore, Daya Kor Amore, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu, Daya Kor Amore, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Koramore Toma Vina Ke Dayalu Jagat Samsare Toma Vina Ke Dayalu Jagat Samsare Patita Pavana Hetu Tava Avatara 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 Mosamo Patita Prabhu Napaibe Ora Mosamo Patita Prabhu Napaibe Ora Ha ha Prabhu Nityananda Premananda Sukhi Ha ha Prabhu Nityananda Premananda Sukhi Ha ha Prabhu Nityananda Premananda Sukhi Aha Prabhu Nityananda Premananda Sukhi Kripa Balokana Koro Ami Boraduki Kripa Balokana Koro Ami Boraduki Doya Koro Sita Pati Advaita Gosai Doya Korosita Pati Advaita Gosai Doya Korosita Pati Advaita Nitai Korosita Pati Advaita Gosai Tava Kripa Baule Pai Chaitanya Nitai Tava Kripa Baule Pai Chaitanya Nitai Tava Kripa Bale Pai Chaitanya Nitai Tava Kripa Bale Pai Chaitanya Nitai Ha ha Swarup Sanatana Rupa Raghunath Aha Brahmanatana Rupa Raghunath Aha Swarup Sanatana Rupa Raghunath Aha Brahmanatana Rupa Raghunath Bhatta Yuga Shri Jiva Prabhu Lokanath Bhatta Yuga Shri Jiva Prabhu Lokanath Doya Koro Shri Acharya Prabhu Srinivas 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 Ramachandra Sangamage Narottamodas Ramachandra Sangamage Narottamodas Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Doya Koramore Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Doya Koramore No Mavena Kedayalu Jagat Samsare No Mavena Kedayalu Jagat Samsare Jaya Gornitai 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 Haribo 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo Nitai Gaur Haribo 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 Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Haribo 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo Nitai Gaur Haribo 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 Nitai Gaur Jaya Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Radhe Jaya Radha Golokananda Radha Kananda Ram Jaya Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Radhe Jaya Radha Golokananda Golokananda Radhe Jaya Giri Govardhan Giri Govardhan Giri Govardhan Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Giri Govardhan Giri Govardhan Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Shri Gornitai ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Golokananda ki jai. My dear Lord, please be merciful to me, because who can be more merciful than your Lordship within these three worlds? Your incarnation is just to reclaim the conditioned fallen souls, but I assure you that you will not find a more fallen soul than me. Therefore, my claim is first. My dear Lord Nityananda, you are always joyful in spiritual bliss. Since you always appear very happy, I have come to you because I am most unhappy. If you kindly put your glance over me, I may also become happy. My dear Advaita Prabhu, husband of Sita, you are so kind. Please be kind to me. If you are kind to me, naturally Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda will also be kind to me. I pray for the mercy of Swarup Damodar, the six Goswamis, namely Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Bhatta Raghunath Goswami, Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, and Lokanath Prabhu. I, Narottam Das, pray to the merciful Srinivasacharya, and I always desire the company of Ramachandra Kaviraj. Srila Narottam Das Thakur Ki Jai. Chaito Darpana Marjanam Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam. Sarvatmasnapanam Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pitani Amita Smarane Nakala Etad Drishita Vakripa Bhagavan Mamapi Durdaiva Midrishami Hajjani Nanuraga Trinadapi Sanichena Tarorapi Suhishuna Amani Namanadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Nadanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Vajagadisha Kamaye Mama Janmani Janmani Ishvare Bhavatad Bhaktira Hoitaki Twai Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Buddha Kripayata Vapata Pankaja Stita Dul Sadrashim Vachintaya Nayanam Galadashu Daraya Varanam Gadgada Hridaya Gira Pulakarnishitam Vapukada Tavanamagrahane Bhavishyati Yugayatam Namishena Chakshusha Pravashayatam Shunayatam Jagat Sarvam Govindam Virahename Ashlisha Vapadamritam Panastumam Hadarshanam Marma Hata Karotuva Yatatatava Vidadatu Lampato Mat Prananatas Tusa Eva Napara. Victory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, congregational chanting of your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you've invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service birth after birth. O Son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen in the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri Shastika Ki Jai.